Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for joining me. I've discovered that I don't upload on a fairly regular basis. So it's really, if you are interested in the classes and card techniques that I showcase, it's a really good idea to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified because, yeah, turns out I'm not great at keeping it on a regular schedule. So first of all, thank you so much again for joining me. Please, if you like the technique, please make sure that you like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you feel like it. But today, what I'm going to be working on is creating beautiful texture with mirrored cardstock. So it's getting close to the holiday season, and so I'm trying to, while I'm doing my classes and everything, I want to make sure that I'm getting a couple of holiday cards made. So the first one here is done using, this was done using Tim Holtz mirrored cardstock. It's craft on the back. It's similar to this black one. It was on a part of an 8x8 sheet that I cut down to 4 by 5 1/4. And you can see it's craft on the back, and then just the mirrored, almost like a matte, or yeah, a matte metallic on the front of it here. So then I just added a little die behind, little happy holidays from our home to yours, and a few Nouveau drops in gold, and then a nice green to just kind of bring in what the pine needles would be like. So these are a couple of the examples that I've done. This is another one. I love this cardstock. This is the Iridescent mirrored cardstock from Tonic Studios. Love it, love it, love it. This is what it looks like without the embossing on it. So this is 3D embossing folders. This embossing folder is from Simon Says Stamps, and it's just gorgeous. I think the pine needle one, Delicate Pine Branches, that was the previous one from Simon Says Stamp. That's from the gold one. And this is the Simon Says Stamp one as well. I don't have the name of it because I've thrown away the packaging, as I usually do. But it's got the trees. They have a couple that look like this in this style. And so you get this beautiful sheen and then this beautiful extra texture. And then I've added an extra step in between. And that's really what the class is going to be today. It's very simple, short and sweet. And then we have this one as well. So obviously this can be done, you know, I'm doing Christmas cards, but also can't go wrong with a blinged out happy birthday card. So this 3D embossing folder is one of my favorites. I think it's called Radiating Kaleidoscope, but don't quote me on that. And this is also Tonic Studio paper, and it's this purple color. So you can just kind of, like, it looks like an opalescent jewel on it. It's just gorgeous. Love it, love it, love it. Anyway, let's get started with the technique today. It's really, as I said, quite simple. What you will need is you will need some mirrored cardstock, any mirrored cardstock. So it can be iridescent, matte, just regular shiny, will all work. This one has a white back, so it'll have a white pour to it. This one is craft cardstock on the back of it. So either or will work, not a problem. You will need 3D embossing folders of your choice. So today, for this, I'm going to be using the Delicate Pine Branches again, and also the snowy winter scene with the trees on it again, just because I love how that card came out. So I'm wanting to make another one. That's the main part of the technique. The other thing that you will need is a sponge. A sponge. This is not a sponge. Something for sanding. Okay. I happen to like. This is like a nail buffing. It's kind of like a sponge, but it's basically a nail buffer, but it has sandpaper on it. You can use this. Before I found these, I used just one of these, which I got from the dollar store. You know, this was $2, I think. Dollar Tree carries white ones like this that are sanding sponges. I got mine from Amazon. I got 20 of them for like $10 or something like that. So it's cheaper than Dollar Tree. But if you're only looking for one or two of them, Dollar Trees or dollar store is an excellent find for that. And it's basically, you know, it's just a nail buffer, but it has sandpaper on it. So we're gonna rough up the edges. You can also find Doris carries a cubed one that you can take the sandpaper on and off. So Doris is a craft supply company for paper crafting. There's also another one. I'm not sure who carries it. It could be Tailored Expressions, could be maybe it's even scrapbooking.com or Simon Says. I'm not sure who the other one is, but I know that Jennifer McGuire uses one that's actually from a crafting company. This is a frugal area. I choose not to spend my money on these kind of things. I like to spend it on good paper and good inks. So yeah, cheaper than cheap. I can get these. I got these for 55 cents or 60 cents a piece, and that works just great for me. So it doesn't have to be anything too fancy. The only other thing that you will need is a die cutting machine. I have mine just off to the side here, just out of frame here. But and however you need to put your sandwich for your particular machine and embossing folder. So I'm just going to move that one to the side, and I'm going to start with the red into my folder here. Now, what I have done is I am making standard A2 size cards, which are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I have cut my card front panel down to 4 by 5 1/4 because I want to have a little white border around it. And I don't want to have to cut it after I've run it through my embossing folder because I could squish some of the detail out of it. Some of them it's not that important. You know, I've got some sides around here. There's a lot of open area on this particular one. But on this one, because of course I forgot to cut it down before I put it through my embossing folder. It obviously didn't wreck anything or anything like that, but it is sometimes it could squish down a little bit of your texture that you're putting on the sides here. So try to remember to trim it down before you run it through your embossing machine and through with the folder and all of that kind of stuff. If you can. If you can't, it's not the end of the world. You can always do it afterwards. Okay? The only other thing that I'm going to add is a baby wipe. Okay, and I'm using baby wipe because I want to add some moisture, and I'm going to do it to the back of my cardstock. And the reason why I'm doing this is because it helps to soften my paper fibers so that when I run it through my embossing folder, I don't end up getting a lot of tearing because I don't really want my cardstock to tear. And this is a very, as I said, it's a 3D, so it will have a ton of texture and a ton of embossing and multiple layers. So when you go to put it through and things like that, you want to make sure that you're not going to be ripping your paper. And if you do, it's not the end of the world. You can't really see it from the sides or when you're using your item. But let's have a look. So here we go. I've just placed it inside. And so just for you guys, because I take my stuff out of my packaging because it works for how I like to store things. So I've just marked it here so I know who the company is, which is Simon Says Stamp, and that this is the front of my embossing folder. And sometimes sometimes some techniques you want to use it so that you have it being embossed, which means that the paper, the grooves have been pushed up into the paper. But I might want to have it debossed so that the trees are actually depressed. Okay, so you can see here, there we go. So you can see where there's that slight image, and that's called debossing, where it's been pushed into the page or into the paper instead of coming up to the paper. Okay, so right now, this is just gorgeous as it is. You can see I've got still all of that beautiful shine and the trees and everything. But what I want to do now is kind of highlight a few of these areas. So to change it, because this gets quite busy even for me, despite the fact that I like a lot of blingy dingy. If you know me, that's the more bling the better, because that's a good thing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little sanding block here, and what's the beauty of 3D embossing folders is that 2D we have, so your sheet of paper is one-dimensional, and then if you have a 2D embossing folder, it just pushes it to a second level. So you have the flat sheet of paper and then the second level, which is why it's called a 2D or just embossing. 3D embossing folders have 3 different levels of texture now. So you have the flat paper, which is this shiny area back here. And then I've got the hills. So these are 1 level raised, and then the trees are a 3rd level. So the branches of the trees are higher, and then the tree underneath the branch looks like it goes in. So it gives it another dimension. So that's why it's called a 3D. So because there's 3 different layers or levels of dimension on the paper, starting with the paper itself, a second level, which is just having this slight raised of texture here, and then the 3rd level where you can see, I don't know if you can see that in the camera here, but from the back might show even better. So you can see how deep in some of these grooves on this tree are going, right? Versus where the snow hills are, kind of thing here, okay? So now I want to enhance a few of these 3D areas. So I'm just going to take my sanding sponge, or well, it's actually my nail buffer, and I'm just going to rub it over the areas where the trees are. I could rub it over the whole thing, but I don't want to take away all of the shine. So what I'm doing is creating a different level of highlight, especially because there's so much shine on this particular paper. So the shine is not going away for all of my paper, but what you start to see then is that the shine, the color is still there with the trees, but now they pop off in a slightly different area because they've been sanded down and slightly buffed. Okay. The reason why I like these buffing sponges is because they're small, because I don't want to scuff up the whole area of my paper. I just want these smaller areas, which will, so these corners and the smaller flat sides allow me a lot more control over where I'm adding my details to. I am still getting some scuffing, and that's fine. It's not the end of the world. When you're using your sanding or your buffing, your nail buffer, you may find that if you're finding that you're not getting a good removal or scuffing or marring of it, try and change it, because you may have rubbed off. These things are fairly fragile. You only usually get a couple, if you're using them for nails and things like that, you only get a couple of uses out of them. They're not made for longevity in general. But if you find that you're not getting good coverage, or the kind of coverage that you want this way, turn it and find a new area on it. But now you can see, so now with my trees, I have that deep shine that's still down in the branches, but it's a little smoother and it has a new, well, it's not a new texture, obviously. I mean, it is a feeling texture, but in terms of the embossing, like the levels haven't changed, but I've now given it again another depth. So the shine pops out from underneath while still having all of that beautiful reflective surface, and just changing it just slightly. So it just kind of steps it up and just adds just a little bit to it. So now I'm just going to add that on to, as I said, I'm making a standard A2 size card. And so I'm going to glue this down. Find my deep runner here. And, you know, because we did add a little bit of moisture, I've got a little bit of sanding grit here. We did add a little bit of moisture to the back of the card, but you can see that it's still quite flat there. So we're good that way. So I'll just go and add a little bit of adhesive. Back there. Oops. Putting it the right way. Okay. Now, I have a prepared sentiment here. So I love this. This is something that, these are something that I did on my Go Press and Foil. I have the Couture Creations one, and I got these dies. I actually got them. They're from Tailored Expressions. And so I foiled in red, I think it's a shatter, red shatter foil, Peace and Joy. And then the set also has some dies that cut it out quite nicely, which is nice because it cut out the in-between parts here too. And this just happens to fit so nicely on here. So I'm going to do that. And then I think I have, let's see here. I also had another sentiment. Yeah, I have a little sentiment strip here that I'm just going to add. I actually got these sentiment strips off of a friend, so I can't even tell you where they're from. But it says, so where there's peace and joy, and then I'm thinking I'm going to put this here. So I'm going to lay this flat to my card, and I'm going to pop up with a little bit of foam tape, the Peace and Joy. Okay, so I need some adhesive and some tweezers. These tweezers that I'm using, I keep this case because they are incredibly sharp. I actually got them. They're Simply Refined from Scrapbooking Made Simple in the States. So if you Google them, it's Scrapbooking Made Simple. She creates quite a few of her own products, and they have a phenomenal point to them. I use them all the time, so they can help me get underneath a lot of things, but they also help with, let's see here. Oops. Make sure that that's relatively straight. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I like that I've got a little bit of red on the end here. Close this and get just a squidge of foam tape. There we go. Okay, oops. Open. Just about out of this particular roll of foam tape. So this as the end that I had stuck here. So I use these tweezers, as you can see from the back here. You might be able to see it here where I forgot a couple of places, but because these have such a fine tip on them, they're great for poking out those little forgotten pieces of dies. I love them. I use them far more than I thought that I ever would, which is great. They were a pretty good investment for $4, even though I had to pay the shipping to Canada. It's definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. There we go. Okay. So my foam tape is not from anywhere in particular. I'm fairly certain I might have even just gotten it from Dollar Tree. It's one of the 3-packs or something like that. So I like this, just kind of off here, not interfering in the scene, but just laying just slightly over top of Give Thanks for the Season. So one card completed, and just to add a little zhuzh, because you know, what's a Christmas card without some zhuzh? We've got lots of great little stars here, so I'm just going to put on some stickles onto the stars here, and I'll let that dry, and then there'll just be a little bit more shine and texture then to the stars as well. So, and these are stickles. I think it's glitter dust, but I'll have to double check here just in a second. My favorite one, Stardust. That's the one. I have quite a few, but this is my personal favorite one. Oh, one card done. Easy peasy. So that was, I don't know, 10 minutes maybe, and most of that was with me blathering on here. So we'll do one more just so that you get the gist of it and can practice along here if you want. So again, I'm going to pull out, I've got my embossing folder and I've got my piece of metallic cardstock. So this one is going to be a matte metallic with the craft behind it. So either or, whatever you're going to use. First thing I want to do is I'm going to take my damp baby wipe and I'm just going to add a little bit of moisture to my cardstock. It might curl a little bit, that's fine. It's not going to hurt it at all because I'm going to put it into here, and that's going to push out a lot of the water, or push it further into the paper. But what it will do is also help it to not tear. Okay. And then I'm just going to take it and run it through my die cutting machine. Run it through. Okay. Da, 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 da. Oh yeah, nice. Okay, so now we can see how that pushed up all of that beautiful texture. This is such a gorgeous die cut or embossing folder. So, and it's really nice for holiday season, but this is also, I'm not actually going to turn this into a holiday card. It's going to be a thank you card that I think would actually be really nice for a masculine card, right? Because there's not a ton of bling or anything on there. It's very matted and muted. So What I want to do now, though, is I still want to add a little bit more texture. So I'm going to bring my nail buffer in, or my sanding sponge, whatever you've got. And I'm just going to hit it in a few spots. And you can take it as far as you want. Okay, so you can see here in my light where it's actually buffing off a little bit, and it's actually starting to turn some of those pine needles almost a silver color. So instead of the black or gunmetal color, I guess that would be, it's just taking off that top hint of that to actually, and you can see a little bit here now on the sanding sponge, right? So I'm just gonna and just take off. If you want, like, you can go right down so that it starts to show the craft. You can go right down to, or if you've got white backed cardstock, it'll go right down to white. You can go as far as you want. You can go right through the paper. I don't know that you want to, but you can. Personal choice. You do you. But I'm loving how this is coming out. This, I don't know, maybe the gold that I used the last time with this particular kind of cardstock didn't do this. It might have been just too shiny for me to see the difference. So this is super cool, though. Okay, yeah, so you can see where it's come off now onto the sanding sponge. You're just going to give that a little bit of a wipe. I don't necessarily want that transferring onto whatever my next project is. A little wipe with my baby wipe, put it to the side here, and clean that up a little bit. Oh, okay. Now, I don't know about you, but that, I think that that looks so cool. So now I've got the shiny black behind there, plus the shiny silver. This is quite the happy accident, because this was not the result that I had when I was doing it on the gold. I didn't know it was going to look like that. I think the gold, I might have filed it right down to the craft, which looks just gorgeous too. It's just a different look. See, this is the same cardstock, same. Yeah, so that's silver. See, to me it looks like it's white, but that's actually silver then that's showing through there off of the gold. So cool. So cool, so cool. That's the fun thing about paper crafting. You just never know what you're going to get, because everything can be different each and every time, right? So that's kind of fun. All right, so I'm going to stick this down because I'm done whatever I need to do on the front of here until I embellish it or whatever. So now I'm going to, again, stick this down. So this card front panel here is 4 inches by 5 1/4. It comes off of an 8 by 8 piece, and I trimmed it down, and I've kept the cast off here, so it was like this, because if I wanted to, I really could. I already have a sentiment prepared, but I could cut my sentiment out of this and have like a white backing or something like that. I'm actually going to use either this thank you or this one, depending on how big it ends up looking on there. But you could see how if you had a white shadow, that would be really cool to cut that out and just have that as the top part of your sentiment. All right, looks relatively straight. Okay, stick that down. Now, let's have a lookie. Okay, so I've got this ginormous thank you, which is great, because I'm not planning on putting a ton of other embellishment on here. So I've got this thank you, and then this tiny little thanks so much sentiment that could also go with it, right? So if this was, for example, if this was popped up, this could fit right here, or even right here, like just have it stuck down, have my thank you up like this. I'm not sure if that's quite in frame there. There you go. So like that. So thank you, thanks so much. Could be that. The other one that I've got here is this. So it's much smaller, much more subtle. So again, here, use my fancy tweezers here. So thanks so much. And then thank you. I actually kind of like that better. Do that, or we could do this thank you looks nicer if it's on this bigger on the side one. Yeah, you know what? I like the littler one. So the littler one it's going to be. So where do I want? So I want my thank you here. So my thanks so much is going to go right there. So let's these are just some little bottles that I put my art glitter glue in. It makes it so much easier to get a small amount on. Stick that. Stick that down. Move you out of the way. And I did get a little bit of glue squidging out, which is okay because it is art glitter glue, so it will dry clear. But I can also take my tweezers and just give it this little swipe here, and glue is gone. Okay, so that's going to hold there. And let's find some more. Dimensional tape. That's the word I'm looking for. Right. So now I didn't do it when I made these die cuts because I was just busy stamping, and I'm not sure why I didn't. But usually, what I like to do is actually die cut things 3 times. So I would die cut this, and then the shadow twice more, and put that behind it to add dimension instead of using dimensional tape. Because oftentimes when you put dimensional tape on kind of things like these, or little dimensionals like the little 3D foam squares and things like that, when it goes through the mail, or even if it's just sitting in your storage box waiting to be given or something like that, it can get crushed and folded. No, in general, a lot of people won't necessarily notice that. So if you notice on the back of here, you can see, right? Like I don't have any foam behind the part of this Y or the H or the T. So if something were to come along, that could technically fold that and things like that. Most people that you're giving your cards to won't notice that. But that's one of the things that takes your cards from, boy, that's really nice, to, oh my goodness, you should be charging people for these. Right? So it makes that difference. Somebody doesn't necessarily want to give a card that's got a little bend in it and things like this. The man that I'm going to give this to won't really know the difference. So I'm not super concerned about it at the moment, but that is a really good tip, is to, instead of using foam tape or little foam squares and things like that, pardon me, is to use the actual die cut itself, and just use your spare cardstock, like your scraps and things. That's really great idea for busting your stash of scraps, is to just die cut this shape 2 or 3 or 4, however many levels of thickness you want, and glue it to behind there, and then put that on there. And then you've got, that's all cardstock along there, so there's no soft spots at all, which is really, really, really handy. So this is a very basic and simple card. Now, just because it's going to a man doesn't mean that it has to be so simple that we can't have a little bit of embellishment. So I'm going to bring out my Nouveau drops in the black. So I've got a black sentiment, or a black on white sentiment, kind of a gunmetal colored cardstock with some silver that's popping out. So now I'm just going to add a few little drops of Nouveau drops, just to add in a little bit more color, kind of like that. And I'll do one down here. Oops. Squidge it a little, and maybe one over here. Anytime you're adding embellishments, you want to be making sure that you're adding them in odd numbers. Our eyes, for some reason, really like odd numbers. So we've got 2 cards ready to go. And that was, I don't know, even with all of my faffing about and chatting and everything like that, maybe a half an hour. Okay. So 1 Christmas card ready to go, and 1 masculine thank you card. And easy peasy. I'll get that a little closer so you can see some of the details, the depth, the little Nouveau drops. Great little thank you card. And then somebody will be getting this for Christmas. Yay. It's always good to knock out a couple of your Christmas cards. So the texture on these ones with the iridescent is a little different. And of course, because the pattern isn't all over either, it's much more subtle, because I've only did the raising or the sanding on the trees, because I wanted the rest of it to be shiny. So, yeah. Again, if you have any questions, by all means, please leave them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thanks again so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the class, and take care of yourselves. Again, leave a like and a comment below, and subscribe if you haven't. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Talk to you later.